With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, Algeria has highlighted the need for the Security Council to act firmly to save what remains of its credibility and impose a ceasefire on Gaza due to the famine policy used by the Israeli occupation as a weapon of war. Two UN officials have stressed that Lebanon and its 600,000 internally displaced persons are facing a humanitarian catastrophe as the Israeli occupier is intensifying its aggression against the country. The third edition of the International Youth Forum in solidarity with Western Sahara will begin tomorrow Friday in Bilbao, Spain, with the participation of several delegations from all over the world. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has congratulated on behalf of the Algerian people and government in his own name the President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Taye Atske-Siaoutsi, on the occasion of his election to the Supreme Magistracy of his country. In his message, the President of the Republic wished the Ethiopian President success in the accomplishment of his high missions and the Ethiopian people well-being and prosperity. Prime Minister Nadir El-Arabawi has chaired a government meeting devoted to monitoring the implementation of the additional programs decided by the President of the Republic to the provinces of Jilfa and Tindouf. The government examined the state of implementation of the projects registered for the benefit of the various sectors in the two provinces concerned and took necessary measures to speed up the pace of their completion, given the significant impact expected on socio-economic development, the improvement of the citizens' living conditions, and the quality of public services. The government also heard a presentation on the start of the new vocational training year, examined a draft executive decree laying down the procedures for the certifying aerodromes of international use, the means of developing the performance of the National Agency for the Digitization of Health, and heard a progress report on the implementation of the exploratory program decided by the President of the Republic for the benefit of young owners of startups. Now, the Speaker of the National People's Assembly, Ibrahim Boughali, has chaired a coordination meeting with representatives of both chambers of Parliament in the General Assembly of the Interparliamentary Union on the eve of their participation in the 149th IPU General Assembly, which will be held in Geneva, Switzerland. The Interparliamentary Union is the largest and oldest multilateral parliamentary organization which provides an important forum for parliamentarians to defend the causes supported by their states, notably in view of the growing importance of parliamentary diplomacy. The magazine Al Jaish writes in its October issue that the completion of the process of building the new Algeria with a view to achieving the country's Renaissance project following the re-election of Abdelmajid Tebboune as President of the Republic for a second term is a noble aspiration that enjoys the support and backing of all sincere Algerians aware of the scale of the challenges looming in our regional and international space. Said Bougazi has more details.
The magazine El Jaish recalls the words of the President of the Republic, who underlined that he will continue to assume this responsibility of completing the process of building the new Algeria and bringing to fruition the project for the rebirth of our country out of loyalty to the people's trust and loyalty to the fatherland, especially as it comes at a delicate time marked by challenges at domestic, regional and international levels which require greater mobilization of energies and capacities to add further achievements and gains to those tangible and undeniable materialized during the previous mandate. These are clear achievements and gains that cannot be concealed by denial nor obscured by denigration. LJ underlines that the President of the Republic will hold an open national dialogue to plan the path our country will take to establish a genuine democracy. The second term will also usher in a new phase, that of strengthening the capital of major economic, social, and diplomatic achievements that marked the previous legislature, despite the exceptional circumstances that characterized its start. A mandate during which many vital national projects were completed, not to mention the various projects opened up in a number of fields, notes the same source. For El Jaish, this new stage, with all the stakes and challenges it entails, requires the solidarity of all Algerians and the combined efforts of all sectors and institutions of the state, including the National People's Army, worthy heir of the National Liberation Army, which continues to carry out its constitutional missions with determination and rigor. El-Jaish adds that the army remains vigilant, ready to take up any challenge and deal with any threat, whatever its nature or origin, by reinforcing its operational readiness through continuous combat preparation adapted to different developments. The magazine goes on to say that Algeria stands out today as an example of security, stability, and tranquility, despite all the desperate and futile attempts to target it, thanks to the high level of awareness of the people, all categories included, and their cohesion with the institutions of their state and their National People's Army. This cohesion, which underpinned the success of the greatest revolution of the 20th century, our glorious liberating revolution, whose 70th anniversary we are preparing to celebrate, will forever remain the catalyst for the security of a strong, developed, safe, and stable Algeria, concludes El-Jaish in its editorial.
Now, a delegation from the Council of the Nation is to take part in the Symposium of African Senates to be held today and tomorrow in Ivory Coast under the theme The Idea of the Senate and the Senatorial Experience in Africa. Organized at the initiative of the Senate of Côte d'Ivoire, the agenda of this symposium will include debates on a number of topics relating to the examining of parliamentary bicameralism in terms of ideas, experiences, organization, performance, challenges, and opportunities, the prospects and future of this system in Africa, and the experiences of certain African countries in establishing and strengthening their legislative assemblies with a second chamber. The CEO of the energy group, Sonatrach Rashid Hashishi, and the delegation accompanying him to the St. Petersburg International Gas Forum in Russia have held a high-level meeting with a delegation from the Russian company Gazprom, during which the two parties examined ways of developing bilateral cooperation relations. As you followed in our top stories, this is Radio Algeria International. The permanent representative of Algeria to the UN, Ambassador Ammar Benjama, highlighted Wednesday evening in New York the need for the Security Council to act firmly to save what remains of its credibility and impose a ceasefire in Gaza due to the famine policy used by the Zionist entity as a weapon of war. Speaking at a meeting of the Security Council on the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question, held at the request of Algeria and Slovenia, Ambassador Benjama recalled that the Security Council resolutions formally prohibited the use of famine as a weapon of war, criticizing the silence of the international community in the face of the crimes of Israel, claiming that this silence has become more than a complicity, but rather an active participation in these crimes.
The longer the international community turns a blind eye and remains silent in the face of these crimes, the more the Israelis' tyranny and arrogance grow. Silence has become more than mere complicity. It is now an active participation in this crime. As we witness this barbarity, we must acknowledge that it is a glimpse into the future, a future war devoid of morality, a future war devoid of humanity, a future war devoid of international norms. As we fail, as this Security Council failed to hold the Israelis occupier accountable, it became emboldened, believing itself to be above the law. Those who remain silent or try to justify today cannot claim to defend the rule of law tomorrow, because there will be no law except the law of the jungle.
During the meeting, Palestine has condemned the Israeli attacks on humanitarian workers and Palestinians.
The unprecedented attacks against the UN and its Secretary General, as well as the attacks against UNRWA, the physical attacks against its staff through killing, maiming, detaining, and torturing them, the attacks against its headquarters, the bombings of UNRWA schools, shelters, offices, and storehouses, and distribution centers, and now the threat of legislation to prevent UNRWA from operating at all in the occupied Palestinian territory have to be understood in that context. And in this connection, we totally support UNRWA and what Lazzarini said, and to take it very seriously. And UNRWA is a very indispensable organization that should be protected by all means.
That was Riyad Mansour, the ambassador of the State of Palestine at the UN. The UN Security Council meeting on Wednesday, held at the request of Algeria and Slovenia, which examined the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip following the Zionist aggression that has been going on for more than a year, heard a testimony from the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, and UNRWA. The details in this report by Said Wazi.
The director of the Finance and Partnerships Department of the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, Lisa Doughton, said that the evacuation orders recently issued by the Zionist occupation forces for large areas of northern Gaza, as well as the intensification of the ground incursions of the occupying army, threaten to cause more death, destruction, and massive displacement of civilians. Once again, she said, it is absolute chaos before the eyes of the world, before expressing her deep concern about the threat of termination of UNRWA activities. This would be disastrous for the provision of aid and of basic services to millions of Palestinians in Gaza and in the occupied West Bank, she added. We cannot pretend to be unaware of what is happening. The Security Council and the member states must take the necessary measures, she launched, before calling on the member states to take measures to achieve an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and find a way to a lasting peace. These atrocities must stop, she said. For his part, the Commissioner General of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini, has declared that after a year of deep suffering and loss, Gaza has become a completely unrecognizable place and a cemetery for tens of thousands of Palestinians. He underlined that the need for UNRWA services in Gaza, the West Bank and Lebanon has never been so great.
The need for the agency services in Gaza, the occupied West Bank and Lebanon has never been greater, and we have never been under fiercer attack. Legislation to end our operation is ready for final adoption by the Israeli Knesset. It seeks to ban UNRWA's presence and operation in the territory of Israel, revoking its privileges and immunities in violation of international law. If the bills are adopted, the consequences will be severe. Operationally, the entire humanitarian response in Gaza, which rests on UNRWA infrastructure, may disintegrate. Coordination with Israel would cease, further disrupting the provision of shelters, food, and healthcare to people in desperate needs as winter approaches.
Several delegates also spoke during the Security Council session to underline the urgency of a ceasefire in Gaza and the management of the enormous needs of the Palestinian population, as well as a firm UN warning to the Zionist entity that wants to ban the humanitarian mission of its humanitarian organizations, OCHA and UNRWA, in the Gaza Strip.
Lebanon and its 600,000 internally displaced persons are facing a humanitarian catastrophe, stressed on Wednesday the two UN officials at a time when the Zionist entity is intensifying its aggression against this country, while the Security Council met on Wednesday to discuss the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, and that he is due to meet today to discuss the situation in Lebanon. The special UN coordinator for this country, told the press that Lebanon was facing a conflict and humanitarian crisis of catastrophe proportions. The UN humanitarian coordinator who is on mission on Lebanon, Imran Riza, told journalists at the UN headquarters in New York that Lebanon was facing one of the deadliest periods in its history.
Over the past year, the escalation of hostilities has inflicted severe damage on communities in southern Lebanon. In just the last 3 weeks, the violence has intensified, as you know, causing widespread civilian casualties, mass displacement, and extensive destruction across the country, marking one of the deadliest periods in Lebanon's recent history. For the Lebanese, this conflict also brings back painful memories of past crises. For Palestine and Syrian refugees in Lebanon, it serves as a stark reminder of the devastation they have experienced in their own lands. And for the migrant workers left stranded right now, it brings uncertainty and insecurity.
He estimated that 600,000 people are internally displaced Lebanon, more than half of them children. The third edition of the International Youth Forum in Solidarity with Western Sahara will begin tomorrow Friday in Bilbao, Spain, with the participation of several delegations from all over the world. The forum, which will be held until Sunday, is expected to welcome between 190 to 220 participants, representing dozens of countries from Africa, Asia, Europe and Latin America. According to organizers, the forum provides a platform for young people from various countries to discuss and develop strategies and policies to find solutions for young people. It also provides a safe and inclusive space for young Sahrawis to express themselves freely, share their experiences, and engage in constructive dialogue. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye for now.
Rising Issues, a weekly program presented by Majid Mila.